Hello, everybody. We are live here on the Dr. Boz Show. Welcome to Tuesday. We have gifts and answers tonight, a show that I'm excited to share with you. I will say that the inspiration from this show got a little stronger when I was listening to a podcast about the psychology or the neuroscience about giving a good gift and what the hacks are to do a better job. I learned a few things. I had a few aha moments. I hope you'll enjoy those. I'm also going to share some of my favorite gifts to give and a couple ones that I've received. And then we're going to quickly get to quite a few questions. We had folks on the Facebook page putting in questions preparing for today. I just did my numbers a second ago. We've got a blood sugar of 82 and a ketones of 2.0. We filmed earlier this afternoon on a show that had me eat a couple of bites of sardines. So it's not the perfect fast, but close enough. And I am, I'm really excited to share some of the insider stuff that goes on in the channel, but also some things that maybe you should just take to heart before you push buy on some of the gifts you're going to give this season. So I do want to say hello to all the folks that are out there. I see some of the regulars that show up time and time again, and really hope you, I hope you're coming because you're looking for a community to stay consistently keto. That's what I try to offer here on Tuesdays. A little lesson each week, but really the place to answer questions live. You'll notice that there are no commercials when we do this live. It's only in the replays that we turn on those advertisements. So if you really want that, dial in when we're doing this in real time. I am going to start by saying there are some rules about gift giving that I learned a lot as I was listening to this podcast. And let me start with the top 3 do not do's. Do not do's. Number 1 is, that person who gives a gift I donated to your local, your favorite charity. It turns out that the reward for the receiver is the lowest possible score that you can get when they metric how well a gift goes over in somebody's life. One of the second to the bottom, meaning the worst gifts to give, is actually a book. And I've been guilty of that. I've had a book. I actually was going to share one of my favorite books that I read this year is The Great Good Thing, and it's a story about a man who was born Jewish. It's a true story. And then atheist. And he's a big philosopher, likes really maybe he doesn't have a degree in philosophy, but, and he became Christian. And as his journey to Christianity is just, I don't know. I loved the book, but I will not gift it to anybody based on the things I learned today. But the third thing, that is the biggest mistake people make when they are giving gifts is, that moment when you give a gift and you do it really well and the recipient gets surprised and they're like, it's that thing you see on movies, like surprise. I mean, just this moment of, that? Yeah, well, that was for you. That's for the recipient. A surprise when you're giving a gift, if you're reaching for surprise, that is like the top 1%ers of gift givers. And it might not be me that does that. I mean, I don't know if I've gotten surprised to my husband one time in 30 years. And he remembers the moment and so do I. But surprise is hard to do. And it turns out when you're trying to reach for surprise, the moment they open a gift and they're surprised, you're doing it for you. That is a high dopamine reward for the people giving the gift, not the ones receiving the gift. That when you look at the rules of a good gift giver, it starts with, don't focus on the surprise. If you're going to use the moment of surprise, then change the timing of the gift. Don't focus on, don't say on Christmas, on their birthday, on Valentine's Day. The surprise is going to be a really difficult and risky thing that often results in the gift that was for the giver, not the getter, not the recipient. All right. So a couple of gifts that I thought I would share. Some of the ones that one of the gifts where I did get a surprise, my husband and my son took a father-son trip and went to Iceland. And he came back and he gave me this. This was a gift that I don't have a link to this anywhere because it's naughty, but it is one of my favorite things, which was black chocolate, dark chocolate, black chocolate. And it's like a December Advent calendar thing where the size, I actually saved one for this. The size of the doses come in a prepackaged dose limited, it's black chocolate or black licorice. Excuse me, I said chocolate 3 times now. Black licorice with chocolate around it. And I had somebody gift it to me last year, and I have never tasted anything so delightful. I love black licorice. I don't eat it very often, but when he found this and he did it in this Advent way that, I mean, it was naughty. He shouldn't have done that. He knows I love it, and I can't say no to it. There's a few things just like, life's too short. I'm doing that. That was a good surprise moment, but that's rare. That's hard to do. And like I said, I would have never put that on my want list because I know better. Second thing about a really good gift is, of course, when they're sentimental. I gave a gift this year that's sentimental, and it is to all of my neighbors. I had a picture of our family, so maybe it's selfish that I'm giving them this. And then I had a company cut out our street name, and I hung it on the doors of everybody that lives on my street, and I told them this: hang this ornament on your tree and pray for a better year in 2025. And yeah, maybe I gave that gift for me. That might be selfish. I want to get to know my neighbors. I've only been on this street for a little over a year, and a hurricane took out our house. Having an experience, which is actually the third big reason for a good gift, is focus on the experience. As my 3 sons are going to be home for Christmas. One who's already home from college, and he came home a week before I thought he was going to come home, so there was no bed. We're cutting cement in the house. His bedroom is not going to be ready for, maybe by Christmas, but the back bedroom where there was a mattress that was kind of covered in all of the cement dust under a couple of sheets, I had to quickly clean off, put some sheets on it, lift it off the floor with some like 5-gallon buckets just to help not be on the floor. Okay, so the experience that we said, well, maybe our family, as we come home, maybe we live in Tampa, we don't live in Florida, so let's go hang out for an experience for the family. And so we thought we'd like rent a boat that we could all like hang out on for 3 or 4 days. But none of us know how to, the verb is con a boat. It's not a sailboat. If we want to do a catamaran where there'd be enough beds for everybody. And we have a couple girlfriends that we thought we'd invite along. That's the season of life our family's in. And none of us know how to move the boat. So I don't know how good of an experience it is. So then I say, well, can you rent a captain that comes with it? So we're working on the experience, but that's one of the places my husband and I have been focused for the season, saying, how do we have an experience that our kids can remember when they're not going to remember the absence of having a home to come home to this season. But the other positives that were found in this podcast, and then I'll get to some of the other gifts that I've given that were sentimental. Actually, let me stay on one more sentimental. A few years ago, it was probably the 5th season that I did. I was making a homebrew, a homebrew of the face oil that some of you have bought, but it's also, then it was just, I would make batches and batches of the face oil that I use, and I would put it in these little blue bottles, and I'd put it in it's just kind of like homemade things, and I would mail them off to all my friends. And then it got to be too big of a production that my husband says, you need to solve this problem. So last year was the last year that I did that, and we did put that on it's a product now that I sell. So for those of you that are my friends that are used to getting one of those bottles, you and anybody else, if you go onto our bosmd.com, that's $50 off of that bottle that's a pretty steep discount from now until Christmas. So I'm not going to send you a bottle. I don't have a home to mix it in. I barely have a car. We were down to a 1-car family over the last 2 weeks because we had a car issue. So God just keeps whittling away things to make it much simpler. I don't have a choice in this. You're not getting a bottle this year, but I'll put a big discount on the website and help yourself. But it was sentimental. I think the joy of making that for my friends was also something I can, as I was listening to that podcast about what makes a really great gift. And it is that anticipation. And when I was making those bottles, it was not a chore. I really enjoyed it and I loved gifting it. The other part that makes a really good gift is to find an activity that pushes people out of their comfort zone. I think the experience I'm living through in my house right now is just enough. Like I'm back in my bedroom for the first time. We've been hotel hopping for 6 weeks. And in Tampa, you can't rent a Airbnb. They've all been rented to other people who figured that out right away. I thought we could live in our house while they renovated. And then we got to the point where that was not possible. So then you can rent a hotel for like 4 days before they're all booked, and then 4 days. So we've been hotel hopping for 6 weeks. And just on Saturday night, we slept in our bed. Not because the bedroom's done, but just because I said, I am done. I am done. I am sleeping in our bed. So there's a lot of muted things in our experiences this season that are a little less. And so I was looking at what other things are a good idea or not a good idea. And I do have an employee who says he will quit if I do this to him. But if you're really stuck, here's an innovative idea for how to find the perfect gift for someone. And that's to use ChatGPT. If you put a really good prompt into ChatGPT, like their age, what they like, where they live, what they went to college for, what's their favorite pastime, you give them that, and then you say, and my budget is Y, X versus Y. Add that to there. Well, my one son put this in for my other son, saying, what would I get my brother? And he puts all this information in. And the truth is, he'd said that the best gift was a dog. And I'm like, no. Because that whole surprise activity that, my kids were, they're in this season where getting mom and dad a gift is really fun. And that's fun, right? You turn around, you're not the only one giving gifts. Other people are giving you gifts. And they got us a surprise last year that has been really heavy during hurricane season. That is that we showed up after we went to, a mom and dad only visit. We went to Las Vegas and saw U2 in the Sphere. It was super fun. Chad and I had a great time. Come back home, and I have this premonition that something's wrong. I'm standing outside the car, and I said, Chad, something's wrong. And he goes, whatever it is, don't blow up. We walk through the door. And our kids are dressed up as Santa Claus, waiting for us to come in and gift us not one puppy, but 2 puppies. And keep in mind, I'd already said yes to a COVID puppy. Now we have 3 dogs that were very surprising. Anyway, that's to drive home a point that when you surprise people, that's a risk that I'm learning to love. My husband actually the dogs are not enjoying hurricane season either. So we've had to make some accommodations. And so I'm going to go through a couple things that I've gifted my staff this year. Last year, I gave away something that I really like, which is I like the jackets that were in Lululemon. So I had the brand put on the arm and I gave it away to everybody. Not everybody liked those, but I really did. And this year, I gave the Christmas gift away early. And I'm going to show it to you on our favorites page here. Let's do this really quick. That's actually another thing. I'll come right back to that. On bosmd.com, on the favorites page, this right here is called a Dreo. And you might think that's a silly gift. And honestly, when I usually never respond to these emails, but they said, we just think as a keto influencer, you would really like this. And I said, I don't know, something whimsical told me to say, okay, whatever, send me a sample of this, send me whatever promo, whatever it was. And I get this, and I don't know if you can see the this temperature probe right there goes into the meat, and this thing on the top is infusing water. It is the coolest machine ever. It is the coolest machine ever. Let me just tell you a couple of stories about why this machine is what I gave every single coach and every single employee in my company and my kids. it is just the coolest device. And I am one of those people who I don't want to fuss. I've been making steaks on a grill since I was born. This is how you do it. Don't mess with what works. And this outperforms that. Like, our grill got ruined in the hurricane, and we don't miss it because we have this. And the probe tells the internal temperature of the meat, and then the outside of the meat, it waits and puts this really impressive crisp on that. And it's, I don't know, it's like it's convection heat. There must be some microwave heat in there. It's got moisture, so there's some sort of water part of it. I have never looked so good as a cook, and I'm not a cook. But I mean, we had, before the hurricane dumped our freezer over and we lost all of our fish that was in the freezer, we would have salmon steaks that were, I mean, it was so good. It was so good. So I was so excited about it that I said, all right, yes, I will promote your device, but I want you to send it to every one of my coaches. I mean, I negotiated a way to send it to every single one of the employees and coaches. And some people didn't like it. They're like, I don't like things on my counter. I already have one. And I kind of surprised them. So I did that thing that might not be a good idea. But what I've learned first of all, some people, it's not the right thing, but I actually don't think I have a single coach or employee who said, I don't use it. They all, and a couple of people said, I already have a air fryer, because it's not just air frying, it's this combination of, oh, it is so cool. I mean, pork belly is amazing in there. Like, I make pork belly better than the places where I go to a restaurant. Anyway, that every single person that's used it has said, I cannot believe how good it turned out. And whatever air fryer was on their counter before, this is what's on there. Like, I don't have a microwave at my house. We had a super small kitchen before the tornado took everything away, or not tornado, hurricane took everything away. But I don't want anything besides this in my kitchen. Like, oh, it is, now you can't heat up coffee, so that it doesn't work for everything. But I just say, if you're looking for a gift I'm surprised at how well it works. And I don't like things on my countertop, so it's a small like real estate for something on my countertop. And I can't believe how impressed I am with it. When it comes to the other favorites on my, in my life, I want to share one of my little hidden gems that I found over the last 2 weeks that is totally free. And I'll show you that in a second here. But before I do that, I did take all of my favorite things and put them at the top. A couple things that I am not doing any caramels for people or any kind of sweet treats, because I am trying to be better about sharing the gifts that I would, maybe that's selfish, sharing gifts that are keto examples. And so I bought a bunch of these to give away for gifts in the holidays. I'm not doing any other. I gave a few glucose monitors away to people that I knew wanted them. And then I did give away 2 saunas this year that they weren't surprises. They wanted them, and those are some of the things that are on the top of my list. The questions are what we're going to get to, but this is my last thing to share. And before I do that, let me just go here. So for those of you in the chat, do you have, I actually see some of the coaches are talking about the food they've made in this trail. Like, a couple people dried their meat, and I would have never done that, but it really does a good job of that. And you can see them talking about, again, pork belly, amazing. Ribs, amazing. A steak. I'm a beef farmer's daughter, and it is the best steak I've ever had. It's just incredible. All right, so I'm going to tell you a story about something Christmassy that I'm going to share with you. It's free, but I think it's so cool. And before I do it, I need to warn you that, if you went to the movie Wicked, or you saw an advertisement for the Broadway musical that has been turned into a movie called Wicked. And on all of the advertisements on the newspapers or the advertisements on social media, it says, get your tickets at wicked.com. Well, wicked.com is a porn site. And it should be Wicked the movie or something, Wicked part one or whatever they turned it into. But they accidentally just shortened it and put out all the publications, and the backlash from it was, well, it wasn't funny, but it was a little bit funny. Like, oh, that's a mistake. And what I'm about to share with you, I need you to be careful how you type this in, or I'm going to make the same mistake. So I was listening to somebody talk about reading a classic book. And as many of you know, I grew up in a small town with education K through 12 in one building. And I think I had a great education. I think I did a great job with it. But if there's a place that I always have felt insecure, it's that the amount of English or literature that I studied in my high school was minimum viable product. Like, I didn't read a lot of the classic stories. I never had to. I've tried to go back and read some of them just because, I don't know, my kids would study them in their school and I would have never have read it. And I was listening to somebody talk about this podcast because they were saying, have you ever actually read A Christmas Carol? The Charles Dickens actual classic book, A Christmas Carol. And I was like, no, never read it. I mean, I've seen the movie, I've gone to the plays, I love, I know the story. I mean, it's a great story, right? But if you've never read the classic book, they said you should check out this podcast, because this woman takes the classics and she reads them, but not just like an audiobook. It's an audiobook that's like telling you more about what's going on. What are some of the places that you might want help filling in the blanks? And she's only a year into this podcast, but the place I heard about this, let me show you this website here. The place I heard about it, they were talking about A Christmas Carol. Like, oh, what a great idea for, and not just the, Christmas, but as you look at story time for grown-ups. And if you type in time for adults in your podcast, that's the part where you're going to make a big mistake. So Faith Moore is the woman. She's got almost 700 5-star reviews, and I'm not one of them yet, but I'm totally going to leave her a 5-star review. And I started listening to this one, and I haven't listened to the one that just came out yesterday, but she talks about like what you're supposed to have gotten out of, like, not like in a teachery kind of way, just in like, as a reader, what you might miss if you don't have somebody guiding you through that. And so I listened to this one, these two, as we were doing a long commute this weekend, and then she said that the other book that she had just done was Pride and Prejudice. If you've ever tried to read that, I've tried to read that a few times, and I get to like chapter 4 or 5, and I can't get past that. But I'm totally like to chapter 34 for Pride and Prejudice, because she does a great job of bridging through those things where like, this does not make any sense. What are they talking about? And then I lose interest and I don't do it. But The Christmas Carol is a really great Christmas it's a gift without calories, which is what I tried to do on the show. I tried to do 3 things, which was the do's and don'ts. And then what are some ideas for gifts that you can give that don't have calories? I don't know if I did very well. I showed you the naughty gift my husband gave me. That's one of my favorites. I showed you how to cook better food. And so then I tried to like stop there. But there are plenty of places that a ketogenic list is about the experience. And I'm not part of a book club, but I would be a part of a book club like this. It's a really cool experience. So check it out. If nothing else, there's only 5 staves that in A Christmas Carol. So there's at the podcast where you'll get through everything in 5 listens. And I think it's pretty cool. So that's one of my gifts to you. All right, we're going to get to your questions. I'm going to do a quick reminder here before we do that, because I've looked at some of the questions and they're really good. So be typing in your questions. And I just want to say thanks to all the people on the Facebook Neurons page that put some of those questions in, because it is fun to answer these questions like that you guys have. So number 1, those are the favorites page that we went here. Oh, I actually wanted to do on here for Dr. Boz's shop. Oh, yeah, that we do have our face oil for $50 off. The other part that I didn't do a very good job of saying last week and the week before is in the month of December, the 21 day is at a $500 discount. That the only way that you can find this link, though, is in the show notes for the YouTube team. So you did get an email about it if you're on our email list. That email has the link that goes to this page. It wasn't open to the wild. We think that's the way we're going to try to say, insiders, this is how you get your $500 off. So if you're looking for that class, it starts January 27th. Again, the best medicine that I've done in 25 years, bar none, is what happens inside that class. That the number that have taken it once and that's all they needed is probably half, but there are at least as many who've said, I took it once, I waited a year, I took it again, and that build of saying, how do you actually reverse these medical problems? How do I improve the skill set? Kind of like what this English this, I don't think she's an English teacher. This lady on the podcast, Faith Moore, is doing for somebody who needs help getting through a classic book. If you need help getting that medical education to reverse problems, that's what that course is for. And I'm proud to lead the team to do it. I think I could have burned out in medicine, but the care, the connection, and the quality of service that's inside that course is still best thing I've done in 25 years of medicine. So join us for that if you're looking for that connection. A lot of the questions that we're going to go through today and over the course of not just today's questions, but when I look at the kind of questions that come in on the Tuesday night, we will find that in order to thoroughly answer them, the best things are the experiences that they're getting inside that 21 day. All right, so let's start with Betty. Betty, thank you for filling this in. I love the face oil. Can I use it more than once a day? Yeah, actually, when I would write the little note to my friends, I would tell them, if you're keto, because not all my friends are keto, but if you're keto, as you take oil and you put it on your face, you'll notice, even just if I do this while we're on the live, so this is my left side, I'll just put it on my left side. It'll be shiny at first, and then it'll absorb. And the health, it's the oils that are in it that penetrate through that epidermis and plump up the dead skin cells. When you're insulin resistant, that the dryness and the layers of skin just seems to be a lot more. So it doesn't absorb into the skin as well in my non-keto friends, or at least it takes longer to get your skin to kind of get used to that. So I put it on my arms and my face a couple times a day. I love the smell of it. I like the way it feels. It's the only product I use on my face. I have a couple Instagram things that I've been sharing about improving face and skin and fibroblasts, and but no matter what the dermatologist is telling me, that's what I use. So yes, you can use it more than once a day. And thank you for the praise on it. I was sharing with my team that one of the best gifts I received from folks this year was the snarky note that the wife wrote to the husband, or said to the husband. He was listening. He bought her one of the bottles when I launched it, 'cause I only made a couple hundred bottles at that time. And he bought this bottle for his wife, and she's like, oh, why would I ever put face oil on my face? And by the time the bottle was gone, she just was raving about it. And I thought, first of all, what a great husband for trying it and just standing there taking the beating from her husband or his wife, saying, why'd you do this? Why'd you do this? And then she turned out to love it. That was a fun day for me to read that. All right, Joe writes in and says, does cholesterol rise when a person takes an antibiotic for bacterial lung infection? So if you had a bacterial lung infection and shortly afterwards you found your cholesterol elevated, I don't think you can blame the antibiotics, but you might have a connection with an infection. So I'm going to assume that if you're writing a question on the neurons page that you're keto, or you've been as keto as you can be. And with that, the response of the body's revved up system to fight, autoimmune, cancer, infection, just it's fighting, it's doing its job, that the circulation of fat can be higher during that time. I've seen this in my patients where they're post-infection, they're post-fracture, they're even post-surgery, and I'll just see that their cholesterol numbers, just the regular panel, is higher. Now, it's probably slight. I noticed it for a couple of other reasons that we were checking it in close approximation to those events, but it's more likely that if you are getting your cholesterol checked and you had a recent infection, that it made a slight bump in that, but not something that you would otherwise notice. You'll see a pretty significant rise in most people who are keto adapted and are using fat as their major source of fuel. I mean, the hardest part, Joe, on that, and we do a pretty good job of really unpacking this inside the course, is how when you look at a cholesterol panel, you can't tell how long that particle of cholesterol or particle of fat has been in circulation. And what they call it in residency is, taking up a home inside your circulation. It's floating around in your body, waiting to deliver its nutrients to whatever part of your body needs that. When the nutrients is fat forward, you're fat adapted. It's fat is that primary fuel. The other thing you'll find on the internet is, lean mass hyperresponders. They are fat forward. They use fat as fuel most of the time, and they have a high particle count. But what's very powerful is the amount of residency time inside their circulation is small. To be able to pick that out, I've been doing this a while, studying NMRs and ketogenic humans, and it's difficult to show it in an N of 1. But when I line up 5 people, some of them that are newly keto, some of them that have been keto for a while, I can teach how you see, is your residency time short, which means you make a cholesterol, you make a lipoprotein circulate the fat, and it gets recycled back through your liver in relatively short time. That's healthy. What's not healthy is when that particle of circulating fat, the lipoprotein, hangs out in residency long enough to get oxidized and get then stuck in a place where, like the walls of your arteries. So I wouldn't blame your antibiotics, but I would have a closer, there are a couple of videos I have out there. I think the best one is Alive, right after the 21 day, so it's probably in August I did it, where I walk through several cholesterols and say, here's how you can see it. All right. Elizabeth writes in and says, oopsie, a little too big there, sorry. So writes in and says, keto for 23 months and I still struggle with high blood sugars in the morning. I feel sometimes like I'm starving myself with no good results. How long will it take to really reverse my diabetes, or will I ever? I am down 141 pounds. First of all, that's amazing. What a gift to yourself, Liz. Nothing like just the hope and the restoration that your body can stay away from the consequences that come from the extra 141 pounds. The best guarantee that you have that you are continuing to back away from the cliff. And I got news today that somebody who's been coming to the Pin Chasers for quite some time has had a stroke. And it's not an uncommon story, where years of poor health. And gosh, yeah, trying hard, just like you are, trying hard to reverse this. And they have dropped a bunch of weight. But how do you get them to back away from the edge of the cliff even further? And that morning fasting blood sugar is critical. It's really important. So do not lose sight of that. Do not lose sight of that. Do not lose sight of that. When I hear somebody who's been a strict keto, and you can feel the discipline you have in this statement, she's still struggling with high blood sugars in the morning. I feel sometimes like I'm starving myself without good results. So the first thing I point out is morning fasting sugars, especially in somebody who's been diabetic or been insulin resistant, where they check those sugars and they're not in the 80s. They're not in the 90s. They're triple digits. It's 100 or above. That would be very consistent with somebody who's had diabetes and trying to reverse it. That would be very consistent with somebody who's had prediabetes, and just it was there for so long that they haven't got the numbers back down. So first things first, you're not alone. Step one is double check that you've got clean, and I mean clean, last bite of food is happening before sunset. So the last snitch of food is in by 4 o'clock. And if you do that for a week and the morning fasting sugars are still elevated, then back it down to 3:30. What you're trying to do is you're not going to do this forever. You're experimenting to try and find how much time does my body need to lower that blood sugar. The other major adjustment I've seen people make and have good results with in this phase is they took that the morning meal was their greater meal. The last bite of food, that last food they have is a smaller meal, but it's like 25% of their food consumption for the day, whereas 75% of their food consumption came in the earlier meal of that day. So they have 2 boluses of food, morning and right before they stop eating, but they put the lion's share of that meal in the morning and only a smaller dose in the afternoon. I would push you to do protein heavy. I mean, like a can of sardines, so protein and fat being the components of that food. I'll share a story that I was just talking to, or kind of recapping Jane's story. She's one of our coaches, but also the gal who did the 100 days of sardines. Incredibly inspiring story where it's not the first time she has done extended sardines. Like the first time she did it for like 30 days and this time it was 100 days. And what she had struggled with is her morning sugars were always above 100. She's a keto coach. She's trying hard. She was carnivore. She was very strict, but the years of elevated insulin, she just wasn't seeing the results. And as a consequence, she was having chronic inflammation sneak back into her life. Like her plantar fasciitis is what really drove her to do only sardines. She couldn't walk. I mean, just not her job requires several miles of walking, and she just couldn't do her job. So she starts on the sardines, and at first she takes her morning fasting sugars from like 100, and she was eating 4 cans a day. So not like a low amount of volume that's a pretty good chunk of food. And she got it down to in the 90s. But then, or maybe she was right at that 95. But as she did the sardines only, her morning fasting sugars got down to 80. And I contend what was happening, and she's kind of spoken to this, that the volume of food is what goes down when you have a sardine challenge while keeping protein and fat high. She actually added MCT to her sardines. So she got this really brilliant response. Great idea. Not only did she lose another 30 pounds, she reversed the plantar fasciitis, and those morning fasting sugars finally got to a place that are healthy. It got to 80. So I'm telling you this, going into a little bit extra here because I'm reading between the lines that you're at it, you're trying hard, you're really looking to at the right results, meaning morning fasting sugars matter. You got to get them under 100. 80 is our goal. So if you haven't pushed to do something like maybe 10 days of sardines, I would love to hear what happens when you do that. Or if you say that's just too much, I can't do that right now. It's a season of temptation. I would push you to say, put your lion's share of your food in the morning, and then maybe it's the can of sardines is right before that 3:30, 4 o'clock meal that allows you satiety. Satiety shows up when you have a can of sardines. They just stop eating. Yet that nutrient density is very high. So it's a real issue, and I have a couple of things I'm adding to the curriculum for this next 21 day that we're doing. I'm testing out a friend of mine who is a psychiatrist and works with food addiction. He works with lots of things, but he's a keto, metabolic health, but really has a brilliant insight into thinking, how are the behaviors we're using? How do they need addressed in a more thorough way? So there's that. And we've also got some testimonies about what are the neuromodulators, the way where we shut off the noise in their brain, and maybe that's the place where a case like this would need help with that. Anyway, Elizabeth, I see your struggle, and I will say don't give up. Try those strategies. All right, Liz writes in and says tinnitus. thoughts, please. Relentless and constant. So let me remind you that tinnitus is an inflammatory problem, a chronic inflammatory problem. And when I say the word inflammation, my brain instantly gets down to the cellular level where the mitochondria and the cellular organelles inside the cell all have too much fluid in them, too much water. They're inflamed. They have excessive bogginess. They don't work as well. In the state of ketosis, that's less. When you look at Jane's reversal of her plantar fasciitis, it was this chronic, slow, just a little bit of goo inside those cells of her tendon. Well, those cells don't divide very often. They're pretty stable. So when you get them in there, you got to stay keto for a long time to wring it out. And I had never expected that tinnitus would be a reversible process in a ketogenic diet. I had, in South Dakota, I can remember the first person that told me this, and I thought, oh, that does make sense. Where they had been keto, they've been coming to, weekly group, and they fell off the wagon, but they get back on. And so now you've got consistent ketones in circulation for at least 6 months. And then one day they woke up and it wasn't there. I mean, it's this hard thing, like inside your ear, you can't see it. You can't do surgery on it. You can't go in and wring out the cells inside that, that cochlea. The conduction of that sound or that buzzing or that, that ringing in their ears happens because the nerve is in water or it's in inflammation. It's boggy. The cells of the nerve are filled with fluid. Now, it's not like you can, click it out of your ear. That's your outer ear. I'm talking about the cells inside the inner ear where you hear and your balance is present. That is hard to undo. It is a persistent level of ketosis for many months. And I want to give you hope that it is possible. I'll tell you, for the three that come to mind, the first three patients that told me the story, all were going to support group. They all were attending weekly because the best guarantee that they don't stay in the ditch, they don't stay in the I'm not making any ketone zone the longest, are the ones who don't have a support system that they're checking in with. And again, that's what we make inside the 21 day. The best part of the end of that course is that you leave with a support group that's been trained. I mean, my level of training, and we're not sissies. We really do some hardcore stuff in that class. And as a result, people leave with a true change. Pam writes in and says, for the past 6 weeks, my morning Dr. Buzz ratio is around 45. I've lost over 100 pounds. Oh, I have over 100 pounds to release. Is it necessary to push for 72-hour fast, or is a 48-hour enough or even necessary at this stage? Okay. Perfect question. So what Pam's saying is she is 6 weeks and she's doing really well. A Dr. Boz ratio. She says some very key things here. I'm going to point these out. It is morning numbers that she's talking about, meaning when people send me numbers in the afternoon, or even I'm evaluating somebody's metabolism and I'm looking at their data, the afternoon numbers come with so much noise in their life. How hungry were they? How big was the last meal? Have they, recovered from pneumonia recently? How's their body doing? And, what's their activity level? There's so many variables. But morning numbers happen after they've been the least amount of noise in your body. You went to sleep, you rested for 7 hours, you wake up in the morning and you test on the toilet. You do not run around and walk the dog and make the coffee. You get up, sit on the side of the bed, okay, go to the toilet, and then you test right there. Blood sugars and ketones that give you a Dr. Boz ratio around 45. That is a really good metabolism. And it's not uncommon to say somebody with insulin resistance in a 6-week interval will find a really good churn. I don't need you to, in the book Keto Continuum shows a story of a typical patient progressing through what I think is very standard. They get on the ketogenic diet, they feel great for the first little while, and then they crash. They're like, why am I not making any ketones? If they are paying attention and they're checking things, I can show them how not to crash. I can show them how to stay in the churn. In fact, you can usually see about a week or two in advance when the body is ratcheting up their metabolism. The blood sugars have been, enough to get you a Dr. Boss ratio in the 45. That's just amazing. So you've got these higher ketones and the glucose that's low, but you can start to see it creep. And it's the cleanest data. It's first thing in the morning. Look, those ketones aren't, 1.6 or 1.3 anymore. They're 1. They're 0.9, which is not bad. But when you start to get them closer to a blood sugar that can't stay down, your body's adapting. And that's where we push people to say, instead of, 2 boluses of food that are 10 hours apart, only leaving a short window of no eating, pull that eating window closer together, slide it towards sunrise. These are the little steps that you can do as you see it coming. Keeping a Dr. Boss ratio of 45 that's a strict regimen. If you can do it without fasting at 48 or 72 hours, ride that wave, baby. That's what I do. Because almost always, in order to completely reverse insulin resistance, like if I think about what Elizabeth is struggling with, where she just has those high blood sugars, the persistent fasting will get them there. But the persistent fasting, it takes a lot out of their social, rhythm. Their families really feel the impact when they do that. And it's just a lot harder. It's just a lot harder. I fast every week. I get to, between that 60-ish hours of fasting a week. And I do it because I want my ketones to do what they did on the beginning of the show. The blood sugars in the 80s and the ketones in the 2. And that churn is a reminder. That's a workout for my system. Doing it once a week for sure. And some weeks I do better when I don't have a kitchen and there's no snacking at night and my husband doesn't buy me those black licorice things. I do really well. I can have Dr. Boss ratios in the 30s and 40s for 3 weeks now because I don't have a kitchen. And I did move back into my house, but we still don't have a kitchen. So I would also say if she says I struggle with water fasts, that before you do that, then do a sardine fast. That sardine nutrient dense food is it's impressive to me how well they can advance. I've had people say they got stuck at that sardine fast and didn't advance to the place that really would take for them to really heal. And so they were afraid of the water fast. So I want to give you enough experience. Hopefully you've done at least 1 and maybe 2 of those fasts to have it in a toolbox, saying I've done that and I didn't die. So I think of that as just having it in your toolbox, knowing it's there. When people get really averse to it, like, it's just too hard, I can't do it. That mindset is really dangerous. Like if I look at Elizabeth's, the other thing that I didn't say in here is that it isn't so much that her eating window needs to close, but she may need to add a, water fast once or twice a week, once a week. And that rhythm can really improve somebody with diabetes or previous diabetes. All right. Aaron writes in and said, will a serious shoulder injury affect my blood sugar? Absolutely. A serious shoulder injury comes with pain, especially if it's chronic pain. I don't know how old you are, Aaron, but if you're perimenopausal, one of the most striking things that a lower estrogen level, it's a reveal for me. And this is something that I've seen many times, but I didn't put this together until probably the last couple of years, that how often a shoulder syndrome is it's a first symptom of menopause, is that joint having a history of many times being damaged, it turns into chronic pain. And so they end up with, they have a stacked problem. Not only did they have the pain that causes cortisol. The cortisol sends a message to your liver to release a little blood sugar. We're in stress. I need glucose. We're in stress. And so it sends that message to your liver constantly, not the rise and fall that we'd want in a normal cortisol axis of endocrine surging and relaxing. When that cortisol goes up, glucose is released out of storage from glycogen in your liver, in your muscle as well, but liver is really a quick response. And when it's a constant level, it never gets a reset. It just keeps keeps pulling it out of storage, and you keep filling it. I mean, if you were going to go empty, it'd be great, but you keep making it as much as you're producing it, meaning you make the glycogen and you empty the glucose into the blood system. But I just want to double click, because I've had a few people write in. I mentioned this on a show a month or two ago, that they've written in about this, and this will probably be the closest they get to an answer. When women early in menopause or perimenopausal have a shoulder syndrome, it is super important to talk to your doctor about hormone replacement. That is going to be also the parallel of their metabolism not working right has been just a fascinating thing to look more. I never connected the two as well. I was listening to a orthopedic surgeon, a female orthopedic surgeon, and she was talking about what is it about a 50-year-old woman or 55-year-old woman who suddenly they need shoulder surgeries. And it was like a lot of them. And the correlation about how much less likely that happens when the estrogen wasn't removed from her body. And it was such a huge link to their metabolic journey. So I don't know if that connects with you, but I know there are some listeners out there that will connect with. All right, let's keep going here. We are at Carolyn G. I just got exogenous ketones. The directions say 1 scoop per day as directed by a physician. Is there a rule of thumb? How nice of you to phrase that correctly for my liability lawyer to say that. My husband has been diagnosed with Parkinson's a few years ago. Thanks so much for the help. So Carolyn, 1 scoop per day. What you're looking for, if you're watching the show, it's that you know how to test ketones. When you put directions on a supplement, you have about 4 regulatory teams that are going to look at what those directions are, and what you have to be able to say as the one who signs off on all this is that it's not hurting them. So 1 scoop per day is not going to hurt them. When I first start people out on supplemental ketones, I'll do a quick review of the ones that I offer. The raspberry ketones, they still have the highest ketones per serving of any supplement I've ever seen. That includes mine. That includes Pucker Up. Pucker Up is probably the best absorption, and Pucker Up is the liquid version that you'll usually see me. It has no sweetener. It is super sour, so if you don't like sour, it's called Pucker Up for a reason. It shoots ketones up like in a shot, but it also is not everybody can handle that on the palate. So that's ketones in Pucker Up. Raspberry per scoop has the highest number. I think it's like 9 or 12. I think it's 12 grams of ketones. You don't need 12 grams of ketones to a bowel of a patient with Parkinson's could land them into the toilet. So the scoop 1 a day is an option, but if I would try to consume a scoop of 1 a day, I probably wouldn't have problems with that on my bowels. So as you dose ketones, what you really are looking for is the amount you swallow. What does it turn into? Particularly with a ketogenic approach to helping with Parkinson's, we know that the persistence of ketones matters. Their motor is always going. That's part of that tremor, that's that constant movement. So their metabolism is much higher. In fact, the longer somebody has Parkinson's, the leaner they get. So the fuel source, not only is it not insulin dependent, there's nothing that ketones and insulin have to do with each other as far as delivery into that mitochondria. So when you give a scoop of the raspberry lemonade, you're delivering a pretty good chunk of ketones. It's how much can he handle while keeping his ketones elevated. So in most of my Parkinson patients, I will encourage them to have it in a place where they can sip on it throughout the day. So you are getting and if he's not good about that, like mix it up and get 1/4 of a cup every couple of hours, meaning dose the ketones so that his ketones in circulation continue to pop. By having ketones in circulation, his liver will make more ketones. So over the course of about a week, when they do that, when they dose 1/4 of a cup of, it's kind of tart, so some people don't like it that strong. So dilute it to whatever tastes good to him, and then put that in every couple of hours while awake for a week, and then stop and watch what happens. Now, I wouldn't stop long-term because he has Parkinson's, and you're going to need to supplement that to keep that. I mean, why are you giving ketones to somebody with Parkinson's? You're trying to deliver the fuel energy that is going to be a deficit because of the association with insulin resistance and the metabolic dysfunction that is normally found in people with Parkinson's. You want those brain cells to have constant delivery of fuel. You cannot guarantee that with glucose in a Parkinson's patient. You can deliver that with ketones. It's hard to keep their ketones in that 1 to 1.5 range. And I contend you can't do it on just diet alone in a Parkinson's patient. So, I mean, you might early in the diagnosis, but if they've leaned up, if they've had Parkinson's for a few years, their metabolism is so high, you'll run out of fuel. And so by dosing it, that's what you're trying to bridge. The 1 scoop per day is what the regulatory teams encourage us to say in a place that's not going to hurt people. So dose it to the part where he doesn't get diarrhea and that you keep the ketones. I'd keep it above 1. All right. Hopefully that answered that. All right. Let's see. We've got about 3 or 4 questions left. Sue writes in and says, here. So I should show you guys. Sue writes in and says, I've been doing keto for several years. Recently, I've been having constant tingling in my left fingers and hand. No reason for the issues. A cervical spine x-ray showed mild disc space narrowing in these places. I recently finished a taper down of a steroid pack and I'm doing physical therapy, 3 sessions so far. They think it's an angry or pinched nerve. Sometimes I feel the tingling in my feet. So what you're showing is hands and feet. Are there some nerve nutrients that can be lacking due to a keto diet? I'm 60 years old. Well, first of all, Sue, thank you for that really thorough history because it helps me think. So there is a syndrome called stock and glove, and stock-N glove. And it is a nerve neurodistribution that is, I don't doubt that x-ray and narrowing in those cervical areas is happening. I don't doubt that if you put the steroid pack in and it felt better, that it helps them see, okay, there's probably a pinched nerve somewhere. When you get stock and glove, meaning the toes and the fingers are both in a pattern that's symmetrical. Left and right hand seem to be the same. Actually, you said I've been having constant in my left hand. I don't hear about a right hand. So maybe it's not symmetrical, but it's hands and feet. It says, I feel the tingling in my feet. So I'm going to assume that's both feet. So tingling in the feet can happen for a lot of reasons, but the first thing I think of is B12. It's not necessarily that it's in keto people, but I know they do shy away from, I do too, green leafy vegetables, but it's where a methylated folate is what I would tell you to do. Like if there's something that might be affecting nerve conduction, first of all, I would tell you to type this into ChatGPT and see what it says. ChatGPT can be a great gift giving. What should I get for this person? And I don't know that it's a great gift giving. It's just an interesting idea that we came up with when we were preparing for this show. But when I have found it to be very useful for patients, for you, is you ask ChatGPT, what is the differential diagnosis of a 60-year-old woman on a ketogenic diet with left fingers that are tingly and both feet that are tingly? And you can just put that history into ChatGPT a lot better. I'm fascinated at how well patients are using this tool to help their doctors. Again, help the thinking. It doesn't replace the doctor. It just helps the thinking. Be curious in the moment and, be curious with ChatGPT. The nutrient that I would just say, try this for a hot minute. It's actually cheaper for them to just replace this for the next 6 weeks than it is to do the testing on it. And that is if they have an MTHFR gene that has a difficulty methylating the folate and the B12 and the B vitamins, that can be supplemented. So taking a methylated folate, you can get that off of Amazon pretty cheap, and do it for a month and see what happens. In the meantime, I'd type that into ChatGPT. I think that's a really fun thing that when patients bring it to me, I smile. I think, oh, that is so fun. All right. Carmen says, fasting but still not producing ketones. What can be done? Are exogenous ketones a solution? When I see somebody fasting without producing ketones, the first thing I think of is, did you get to 72 hours? If you really want to produce ketones, here's one way to do it. Even the most insulin resistant patients, when they come into the when they come into the 21-day metabolic kick, I have yet to have people not produce ketones at the end of this. Now, we've had people not do this as robustly, but here's what I tell them to do. Say, you're going to do sardines for 4 days before your fast. So they eat only sardines for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 4 days. And then they fast all day Friday, all day Saturday, and the ketones show up on Sunday. Now, that is an extended commitment. The reason why it takes them so long to produce a ketone is we had to holy Hannah take down the intake of food while keeping protein and fat high. That's what the 4 days of sardines did. And then that's churning a ketogenic state. You're gonna make ketones if you do that. And just prove me wrong by not doing it. By doing it and saying, I didn't do it. If you still don't have ketones at the end of those 4 days, then the fast after that does it. That would be the best way to produce ketones. Now, you can see how if that's the only way to produce ketones, you'll be clicking off and not do it, because that's an extreme measure. But that's one way to turn on the motor. Once you turn on that motor, why can I say with confidence that they leave those 21 days with their metabolism kicked? Because we push all of them to do that. And now those mitochondria that are turned on, they're good for 6 weeks. They have a motor that is working at a higher metabolic rate for 6 weeks. That's a gift. But you might not be in the season, especially Christmas and all. It might be difficult to do that. So you say, well, what else can I do? You can do what you would have done with that Parkinson patient. You want to put ketones in every couple of hours. You want to do it with the least amount of other calories with it. I'm saying that word correctly, calories with it. My favorite way to take in ketones, the raspberry ketones, is with heavy cream and ice. But the cream has calories. And so if I'm working with a Parkinson patients, I want them to have calories. So that'd be great. But if I'm working with somebody with insulin resistant and they just don't have the mental capacity to do 4 days of sardines all on their own and a 3-day fast after, 48 to 72 hour fast after that. That's a lot to ask. Okay. Ketones every 2 hours, a fourth of a cup, a fourth of a cup, a fourth of a cup. Do that for 5 days. And then stop the supplement and watch what happens on the next several days. You will be making ketones. Ketones in circulation make ketones. And so what does that do? That increases that metabolism. You did then turn on the mitochondria for those cells for 6 weeks. Again, once you turn them on, you get 6 weeks of benefit out of that. Which one was a stronger metabolic churn? The first one, the sardines followed by the fast. But I get that that's mentally difficult. All right, we have 2 questions left. I know we're at the top of the hour, but I'll quickly cover them. Oops, maybe more than 2. Gosh, I don't know if I'm going to get through all those. Okay. Lucy says, after several years of keto, my total cholesterol is over 300. A calcium score test resulted in a score of 0. Should my total cholesterol number settle down lower at some point? I have a BMI of 19. Very good. And no other concerns. I'm 61. Lucy, this is that same question I was going through earlier. So it's a common question. So I do not say anything except it's difficult to answer this. What you're looking for in the cholesterol isn't the number. The number is going to be high because you're fat adapted, you're lean. You would be what they call a lean mass hyperresponder if I had to bet. But what you get, what you need to find out is how long that particle is staying in circulation in your system. And like I said, I covered this once on a live right after the last 21 day, but I did it really good in class. We looked at that. And again, I visit every classroom in that experience. And I do my best to not have anybody leave with an unanswered question. Their questions get answered. These kind of questions get answered. So if you haven't done that experience, I would push you to do it because it would give me more confidence about what I'm telling you. 61 is a great time to make sure you're doing it right because you have so much to gain. All right. Melissa says, I've been putting Allulose in my coffee. It's shockingly lowering my blood glucose to 54. Wow. That's awesome. I mean, yes, that's a shocking lowering of blood glucose. So again, Allulose is cool. I mean, I know the first time I ate one, I did a review and thought I had a tummy ache. I did have a tummy ache. My body hadn't seen it. I wasn't used to it. And I have this natural aversion for those things because of how much they've tricked patients. But I have to, eat some humble pie here about allulose and what it does to patients. So allulose binds to the place that fructose should. And so you do not get to metabolize fructose because allulose bumps it out of its parking spot. So if this is where fructose is supposed to go, and it will bind there, and then your body turns it, it churns the sugar through the mitochondria. Allulose binds in its spot and it can't get in there. And so you pee out the fructose. So you lower that burden on your body by having allulose in the first place. So in people with chronic insulin resistance, chronically elevated glucose, chronically turning glucose into fructose, which is this awful and dirty trick that's only supposed to happen in advanced diabetics, but welcome to the world of metabolic dysfunction. There are so many people that turn their glucose into fructose with as little as 110 on their blood sugar. 110. That's going to happen if I have one of those little black licorices. But that displacement of making you not metabolize fructose, but getting rid of it in your urine, that is the power of what allulose is doing in your cells. The other part is when you have a blood glucose of 54, you're hopefully thinking correctly. When I have a blood glucose that low, my ketones are really high. So it is the sum of both how much glucose is around, how much ketones are around. You get to say that when you're fat adapted, when you're keto adapted. When people, they swoon with a glucose of 54, it's because their mitochondria have not been making ketones. It's like the other folks that have written in earlier saying, why can't I get my ketones up? Why can't I get my ketones up? Because you got to give those mitochondria a workout. In somebody whose blood sugar gets down to 54 and they don't notice, it's by definition, they've got good ketones. They make good ketones. Their mitochondria is getting a good workout there by producing ketones so quickly by the dropping of the blood sugar that's a metabolic win. So good job. It's an excellent answer. All right, we'll do one more. It's a little late, but we'll do one more. I'm going to do Wesley's question. I'm losing fat everywhere on keto except my abdomen. I believe this relates to insulin resistance. My blood sugars are normal and my ketones too. Is there anything else to do? So the key here, Wellesley, is to stay the course. You do want those morning fasting ketones to be in the double digits. You do not want triple digits. You want double digits. So when you say normal, I need you to confirm that that's in the 80s-ish, 70 to 90. And when people have that abdominal obesity, it is the last to go. It's the first to go on, the last to go. It's metabolically the most stuck. I'll tell you when folks are stuck with this, if the scale isn't moving, that's where the keto continuum is a really good stepwise plan. If you're stuck, go to the next step on the keto continuum. And most people, it's adding a 48-hour fast. 36 is the first couple of fasts, but then get to 48 hours. And if you need it, 72 hours. You will see that belly fat move once the sugars stay below 100 and you add intermittent fasting. And I don't mean like time restricted eating. I mean fasting like what I do every week. All right, folks, it is a Merry Christmas. I do appreciate you staying around to the end. I would love to see in the chat if you say, what's the worst gift you've ever gotten? I hope that it is a fun story to tell because the pain of that gift is far in the rearview mirror. Looking forward to seeing you next week, and Merry Christmas if I don't get to see you.